So why exactly did the Rams bring back linebacker Troy Reeder? Also, will the Rams really draft a quarterback with their first pick? And we've got the biggest draft bust in Rams history. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bells, drop some comments down below. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. And today, of course, joining me as always is the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, the Rams pre-half and post-game show host. You can follow him on X and Instagram at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we're going to pick up the conversation on the Troy Reeder signing. A lot of people are scratching their heads at that one. Also, the worst Rams draft bust of all time, some of their best first-round picks. We'll dive into some of the draft buzz as well. But first, today's episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Nissan. The all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. All right, Travis, so the Rams, they bring back Troy Reeder. I did a show about it yesterday, and it's definitely a little confusing. I mean, Troy Reeder has hit the free agent market twice now, and he left for the Chargers a couple years ago. This time around, he was testing the free agent waters, and he ends up back with the Rams. But, yeah, I mean, where are you at on the Troy Reeder signing?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, quite frankly, doesn't move the needle one way or the other for me. It's a familiar face. It's somebody that you could probably put back into your system that is going to be basically competent in what you do, but I don't think it makes you a lot better. I don't think it makes you any worse. I think what the most interesting part of it is to me is, what does this mean for the draft? Does this mean that this is a position that they take off the board in the draft, that this is not something that they're going to address necessarily? Does it make it more likely that they go offense because they've signed a defensive player like Troy Reeder? Does it have no effect on the draft at all? Is this just a guy that they're familiar with, that they kind of like, that they know can do a base level job for them at this point? But I know Rams fans are frustrated with Troy Reeder and his previous stint here and the way that it went. But, I think anybody that has followed this team even relatively closely over the last few years knows that this is not a position that they put a ton of value in. This is not something where they have spent a lot of money, with the exception of Bobby Wagner, which lasted exactly 1 year, and they moved off from it. We saw what they did with Ernest Jones last year. This is just the way that they build their team. They have guys that are kind of middle of the road players at that particular position. They choose to build their team elsewhere. And I think Troy Reeder is a perfect representation of good enough being good enough.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the things I was saying yesterday too, a little bit, is that we both in agreement there, is that it's kind of another reminder that the Rams do not pour a lot of resources into that position, and they're going to continue to not do that. I think the thing with Reeder is, we thought when they signed Landman a couple of weeks ago, I mean, at this point, almost a couple months ago, it was pretty much the sign that he wasn't going to be back. And I think for me, the number one thing that this really brings up is, what do they do at the linebacker position in the draft? Instead of taking two, do they take one? Or are you looking to take one, have Reeder be a guy that is a veteran, that knows the system, that it's kind of an inexperienced room when you look at it right now? Yeah. Omar Speights is still young. And I think that's kind of the big question, is he that mentor type? Because I think every time teams that I cover, teams that I follow, I mean, they bring in guys, especially towards the end of the roster. I always think to myself, how many other teams around the league would sign a Troy Reeder, right? I mean, where would he be at? And I think you look at his level of production and some of the issues he's had with missed tackles and things like that. Also, just the pure fact that, I mean, after he went on the IR in week 6, really Omar Speights and Roseboom and just the linebackers room actually leveled up significantly. I do think you can attribute that to them getting more used to Chris Shula's system and things like that. But yeah, I mean, from a production standpoint, there's got to be more to it than just, we're bringing this guy back based on what we think that he can do for us on the field.
I don't think it's a production issue. I want to go to the team that you and I spend as much time talking about as any other team. I want to talk about the Dodgers for a second. This is Chris Taylor, but without the high water postseason marks. This is a guy, coaches, managers love guys that know what they're going to get from them. They, even if that level isn't, I know that they're going to do this for me. Coaches like veterans, coaches like guys that they're familiar with, coaches like guys that they can trust. Even if it's not a super high level guy, they want somebody that they know at worst they're going to give me this. And I think that's what this is. This is not a huge delta where, hey, maybe it's great, maybe it's a disaster. This is it's probably going to be a little bit below average. And you can live with that. He's not the number one player on the roster. You know, he's a guy that is a depth piece. I don't want any variance in this particular spot. And I think that's what that is. And to your point, how many other teams in the league would sign him? Probably not very many, but he only needed one team to kind of know what he is and what he does to come back and fill this role. And when I saw it and when we were talking about it, it reminds me a lot of Chris Taylor. Just give me what you can give me and I will find a way to use it. And I don't have to worry about you at all. That managers head coaches I know what this is. Even if it's not perfect, I know exactly what I'm going to get out of this guy, and I think that he falls right squarely in the middle of that category.
Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that they would take an inside linebacker in the third round potentially, and with Landman, with Reeder, I mean, I think you're going to see Landman and Reeder, Landman and Omar Spades get the majority of the inside linebacker snaps. When you kind of look at the Rams defense, I mean, they're basically playing a 3-3-5 base and kind of using those safeties almost as de facto inside linebackers anyway. So I don't think it's going to impact them that significantly. So yeah, I think I'm with you 100%. I think Rams fans are freaking out about this as if it's some significant move. It's not like this indicates they're tanking for Arch Manning or anything like that for 2026. So yeah, it's just it's been a slower Rams news cycle because we're just in the mind-numbing depths of draft buzz. So I think that's kind of what it's about.
We will not be talking about this as a meaningful transaction beyond today. You know what I mean? Like this is not one of these things that is going to change the way that this team operates. That's going to change the way that this team performs. If they need to get better here, they will. They will address it later. They will address it in the draft. They will address it through trade. But you know, at the risk of beating the dead horse, they just do not put a huge value on this particular spot in their roster, and they've made that very clear over the years.
100% agree. Now, coming up next, we're going to look at the biggest bust for the Rams in franchise history. So the best first-round picks, also some more draft buzz. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Rams forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada clear-cut Player of the Week is Michigan tight end Colston Loveland. A dynamic tight end. He can bring a different element to this Rams offense, give Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay another weapon to work with to make this a top 5 offense to go for another Lombardi trophy. This is the guy that could change things for this Rams offense in the first round. He's heavy, he's rugged, he conquers the road with the ability and confidence. It's also what describes the Nissan Armada. So dream big, go big. When it comes to Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what I think Colston Loveland can do here. It's clear that our Player of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road, ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of our outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Cannot thank you guys enough. Now's the perfect time to join that Everyday Listeners Club, too, by the way. You got the draft coming up. The Rams are basically the storyline of the offseason so many different ways. So definitely join that Everyday Listeners Club, and you won't miss a thing about your favorite team. All right, Travis. So second segment, we continue to hear some buzz about the Rams and a quarterback in the first round. First, it was Jaxson Dart, and now all of a sudden, McVay loves Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. In Mel Kiper's most recent mock draft, he has the Giants actually trading up to 24 to get Milroe because he thinks that if he falls to 26, the Rams will select him. We talked about him on yesterday's show quite a bit. We did a deep dive on Milroe. Look, I like the talent. I mean, the deep ball is, the arm strength is really top notch. Some of the decision-making and the ability to be consistent on intermediate routes definitely leaves a lot more to be desired. But if you're looking for the upside play and kind of the elite traits that you see in great quarterbacks, he definitely has the potential for an elite trait, and that is the ability to run away from DBs and get to the second level, that kind of athleticism and speed, very strong arm to make deep throws, things that I just don't think Jaxson Dart has, as far as he's good, but not great at any one particular thing. And also saw some of the comments say that if he couldn't do it at USC, what makes him think that you could do it for the Rams. I'm just saying. I mean, someone said that down below.
Yeah, look, the days of a guy moving around being a red flag, I think, are long gone just because everybody moves around now. That's just the way that it goes. But a couple of things here. Number one, the last thing that you were talking about, D-Mac, about the athleticism of a player like Milroe, the ability to make plays off schedule, the ability to make something happen with his legs is, from my understanding, something that Sean McVay really likes, that Sean McVay really covets, is a quarterback that can do things when the plan doesn't work, which, as we all know in the NFL, occasionally happens, right? That you want the guy that's going to follow the plan and execute the plan, but if the plan's not working on that particular play, let's get a first down anyway. That's not something that the Rams have really had with the two quarterbacks under Sean McVay. That Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford they're just not that guy. That's not the way that they play football. So that's something that McVay has coveted. So Milroe might fit that bill. Here's my only hesitation with Milroe and Dart and really any of these quarterbacks that may or may not be available come, late first round or wherever the Rams may pick, whether they wait around until 90 in the third round or they move around and find some flexibility in the second round if there's a player they like. Don't take a quarterback just because you want to take a quarterback. Take a quarterback because that's the guy that you think is going to be really good. Clearly, the Rams, whether it's Les Snead, whether it's Sean McVay, whether it's the entire staff, they've been pretty good at picking the right guy, right? When they've said, I'll take him, so far they've been right way more than they've been wrong. That they moved way up to get Jared Goff, and I know it was a bumpy start, and I know that it ended in a way that wasn't entirely satisfactory, but you'd have to be a really jaded person to not look at Jared Goff and say he's a really good NFL quarterback. He is. They picked the right guy. You look at Wentz and how that's gone relative to what Goff has done. They got the right guy. They obviously picked the right guy when it was time to move off of him and go get Matthew Stafford because they punched their ticket right away. Now they missed on a guy like Stetson Bennett. They haven't got it exactly right every time, but if it's Dart or it's Milroe or it's really, I've seen Riley Leonard's name floated around a few times out there from Notre Dame as another quarterback possibility. If it's a guy that you're looking at, dude, that's our guy, then absolutely take him. But if it's just one of those things that's, hey, we got to pick, quarterback's kind of intriguing, Matthew Stafford's 37 years old, let's just see if it works, then I think you go get something to help Matthew Stafford in the short term. You go get him another toy to play with, right? But if you're sitting there and going, look, if Dart's there, that's our man. If Milroe's there, that's our man, then absolutely go do it. But don't try to force that square peg into that round hole. That almost never works.
Yeah, I think I am agreeing with you on that one too. I mean, you love this guy and you're over the moon with his potential and you believe in your building that he has the chance to be a 5 to 10 year starter that has star potential that can lead you to a Super Bowl and be a franchise guy, then certainly go for it. But if you think he's just going to be serviceable to be good, and you're just doing it just because you're taking a flyer on him. It just doesn't make sense for the Rams right now just because of where they're at in their window.
Yeah, that's it. The window. And look, I don't mind a flyer late, right? If you want to just kind of, shoot your shot and throw up a Hail Mary in the 6th, 7th round and, hey, Riley Leonard, take him. What the heck? Yeah, great. That's fine. But when we're talking first round, 2nd round, even 3rd round, unless you're really pretty certain that guy is your guy, or at least, and I get it. Everybody gets it wrong occasionally, but it can't be one of those, it better be a no, I think this is going to work, unless we're later into that draft. And I would love to see him take a quarterback. It would be fascinating, but I don't want them to take a flyer early. Let's take a flyer late if we're going to do it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, he's one of those guys that isn't a big hands guy. Where are you at on the hand thing? I mean, size matter with the hands? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Cold weather.
I'm a big person in the guy's got to look the part. The guy's got to have there's a reason that every NFL quarterback is 6'4". It's not just because we like looking. It's because it works better, right? And if the data is saying that guys with smaller hands fumble more or don't do as well, then it's probably, now there are exceptions, I'm sure. There have been quarterbacks that aren't 6'4" that have done well, but it's a pretty short list. Right. And if you're going to try to make the exception work for you, good luck with that. But there is a reason that all offensive linemen are one size, that all quarterbacks are one size. It's because that works best most often. And if you're going to break the mold, you better be right.
Yeah, I always wonder, how are my hands bigger than Jared Goff's? But yeah, I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He's at 9 1/4. And look, I think it's definitely a little bit overblown for sure. I mean, I think it's been something that's been talked about ad nauseum in the NFL, but I think that every player is unique in its own right. But look, I think Jalen Milroe, I just kind of said this yesterday. If it was between Jalen Milroe and Jaxson Dart, 100% I'm taking Jalen Milroe just because of the upside play that he has.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know. I would say to Sean McVay, which guy do you, if they're both there, which one do you want? And if I'll take the guy that Sean McVay wants. If he likes Milroe, I like Milroe. If he likes Dart, I like Dart because he's got an eye and a level of acumen that I would be wrong. I don't know, man. Look, the guys that do this for a living get it wrong a lot. So if Sean McVay has been right way more than other people, and Snead has been right way more than other people. So if they like one over the other, I'll ride with those guys for now.
And that's a good segue because now we'll jump into getting it wrong. And we'll talk about some of the biggest draft busts in Rams history. I think before we get into it, what really constitutes a draft bust? What is a draft bust? I mean, for me, I think if your name starts with Ryan Leaf, I think certainly you're a draft bust. But no, in all seriousness, I think obviously it depends on where you're selected. If you're a top 10 pick, you got to be a franchise player. You got to be a perennial Pro Bowler that is someone that's the face of your franchise. If you're later in the first round, you got to be a plug-and-play kind of starter that makes it through that rookie contract. I mean, there's levels to this, but busts look like busts. They smell like busts. They feel like busts. They Johnny Manziel like busts. I think it's just there's those names that pop up, right?
Well, look, I think it's Justice Stewart a million years ago on the Supreme Court. Forgive me, I'm not a Supreme Court historian, but the famous line about, I can't tell you what pornography is, but I know it when I see it, right? That's what this is. We know a bust when we see it. I can't give you a specific definition of what it is, but is Ryan Leaf a bust? Yeah. Is somebody that's picked a little bit later and does something that's a little bit similar that a bust? Not necessarily, but we know it when we see it. And look, every single team in this league has a list of busts that are undeniable.
100%. And coming up next, we got our biggest bust in draft history for the Los Angeles and St. Louis Rams. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Okay, so this might be a two-parter. We might push this one into next week. We'll start the list. Biggest bust in NFL draft history for Los Angeles and St. Louis Rams. Start with number 9. Wide receiver Tavon Austin, picked 8th overall, and he did have a solid career, right? It's not like he was out of the NFL in a year or anything like that. He had at least 300 yards from scrimmage in each of his first 5 years with the Rams. He's a really good punt returner, had 3 punt returns for touchdowns in his first 3 seasons, but he did not live up to that electric player that we thought he was going to be at this level. He never had more than 500 yards receiving.
Yeah.
He didn't have the impact that we thought he was going to have as a ball carrier. I mean, he was someone that had one of the best mixtapes that we ever saw. So I got to throw the bust label on him based on where he was picked and the production that he produced.
Yeah, I would be a little less likely to put bust on him. I think
this is 9. This is way down the line.
I understand. I understand that the positionality matters. That number 9 certainly that it's mitigating some of this stuff. But I would classify his career as a Ram more as of a disappointment than as of a bust. A bust to me means I can't even put you on the field, that you are a way below average NFL player. Tavon Austin had some moments. Was he a star? Absolutely not. Was he what you were hoping to get at that pick and what it turned out to be? Absolutely not. But at 9, I guess so a little bit. But Austin, at least when he was out there for a while, you're like, something might happen. If they get him the ball, something might happen. And that to me falls just short of bust. He certainly was not the player that you were hoping to get, but at least there was a little bit of production and a little bit of excitement when he would go out there.
I would say if I had to pick between disappointing and bust, I would lean towards disappointing with Tavon Austin for sure. But did you see the mixtape coming out of West Virginia with him? It looked like he was going to be the best offensive weapon ever.
Well, no question about it. No question. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago with just players being certain sizes and fitting the mold, right? And I understand there are exceptions. He's a good example of an exception that didn't need to be made. I got a chance to talk with him last season during the pregame show. He came by and we interviewed him during the show. He's still in really good shape, but he's little, man. That's a league that is not filled with little people. That if you're going to be little, you need to be an extraordinary something, and whatever that something was that allowed him to be a little person in college football and thrive and have a great deal of success did not translate to the NFL. So that is a good, I think, cautionary tale of be careful. If you're gonna have somebody that breaks the mold, you better be really, really positive that it's going to translate. And unfortunately for Tavon, it didn't quite translate.
Yeah, just if you're personal myself, that the peak was so high. I mean, when my daughter was born at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, literally the very first thing I showed her was Tavon Austin's West Virginia mixtape. That's literally the very first thing I showed her, just because how explosive it was.
It's crazy. No, he has that highlight rip of him is as good as anyone's you will ever see. He was that guy for sure.
Just incredible. Like I said, yeah, I hate throwing bust label on him. You know what I mean? But
disappointment. If
we're gonna do 9, you gotta kind of go big.
Yeah.
We'll kind of breeze through a couple of these. 2002 linebacker Robert Thomas, 31st overall. He didn't play out his rookie contract. It's kind of one thing we talked about. You don't play out that rookie contract and you're in the first round. That's definitely something. He was traded to the Packers prior to the 2005 seasons. 3 years with St. Louis. He made 30 starts, had 164 tackles, 2 sacks. So he did produce to a degree, but 31st overall pick, I mean, that's definitely one where you expect a little more. You kind of move a couple more. I mean, any thoughts on him?
Well, my thought on this is short and succinct, and I think it's why it qualifies as a good example of a bust and why he should be on this list. I have no idea who you're talking about.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that says everything, right? Like, I did not know that person existed on this earth until you said his name 30 seconds ago.
Well, he's gonna be in calls for his family today, man. He made it to the big time today. Travis Rogers is talking about him. Okay, number 7, 2007, defensive Adam Carricker, the 13th overall pick. So now we're getting higher in the draft, right? Expectations a little higher.
Yep. He
was pretty solid as a rookie. Kind of looking at his numbers, started 16 games, 2 sacks, 32 tackles. At least got the starts. He started 9 of the 15 games. He played in 08 and 2009. But fortunately, this is one of those ones where it's a career that was derailed by injury as well. He had preseason shoulder surgery that kept him out the entire season. The Rams traded him to Washington in 2010. He played 3 seasons, made 33 starts. So, yeah, I mean, to me, this is another one. I I struggle to just call a bust. We'll move on from that one. This is another one I find interesting because this guy, he's a candidate for one of the better NFL names of all time, right? 2000 running back, Trung candidate, 31st overall.
Arizona, right?
Arizona guy, a wildcat. And of course, you already had Marshall Faulk, the best, most dynamic running back in the league at that point. And Trung candidate didn't have a big role for the Rams. He started 3 games, had just 495 yards rushing in 3 seasons, scored just 6 touchdowns. What do you remember about Trung candidate, a Pac-10 guy?
So I think these are the last couple of guys you mentioned are good examples of mid-range busts in that I remember them, but I don't remember much, right? I remember them being there. I remember them playing a little. I know Trung candidate simply because I'm a Pac-10 / Pac-12 RIP fan from another era. And so I remember seeing him at Arizona. I remember thinking he was a really good player at Arizona. But his NFL career is very foggy to me. So I think that is a very good example of a bust that not a bust on the I can't believe that guy torpedoed the team, but in a I sort of remember that guy coming through here, which actually may be even worse.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, that's the thing. And it's got to be tough for him joining that version of the Rams, right?
Oh,
I mean, where you're expected to come in. It's not like there's a long runway who's in front of you. But but great name. Let's be honest. It's a fantastic name. So moving on, we've got at number 5. Now we're into the top 5.
Okay.
You got defensive tackle Jimmy Kennedy, the 12th overall pick in 2003. I mean, as far as career length, he did play 9 seasons. He made 31 starts. He appeared in 92 total games, just didn't have a big impact, and especially at that pick, did not have a sack in either of his first 2 seasons. He didn't become a full-time starter until year 4. I think this is one of those guys where it's not like a dramatic bust. It's just like, dude, like, why can't you just be better? Like, you know
what my takeaway on these last couple of names are, Doug, and this is, and I'm not even trying to be funny when I say this. I'm saying this merely as a statement of fact. It is just how little I cared and how anonymous the St. Louis Rams were for a period of time. That when they left Los Angeles in the mid-90s, I knew the Rams really well. The St. Louis era Rams, other than the greatest show on turf, are a complete just black hole in my Rams knowledge. And because some of these guys, like, I sort of remember them. You know, I'm going to remember Isaac Bruce and Marshall Faulk and Kurt Warner and Orlando Pace for sure. But some of these guys that were picked in the first round that never really went on to become impactful guys, man, this is just this is wild. It's like you're talking about the guys from the 1930s. Some of these names don't land at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'll be honest, like, some of these guys are way back when I didn't know too much about, but I definitely know about the next guy, and then we'll push the rest for next week. A little teaser there.
Okay.
You got to mention at number 4, offensive tackle Greg Robinson.
Okay, so here's the thing. I thought for sure he had to be number 1 or number 2. That Robinson has fallen to 4. This is in Les Snead's draft history. That's the one that's just like, huh? Like he's done a really good job. That is a glaring one that's just like, that guy couldn't play. You know, and he was the number 2 overall pick, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So number 2 overall pick who literally couldn't play is the very definition of a bust. Like that is a high water mark where not in the first round, okay, not in the top 10. You're talking the 2nd pick in the draft, and he was literally unplayable almost from the moment he got here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did make 6 starts every season from 2014 to 2019, but he just struggled, holding penalties, ineffectiveness, and the Rams just never really got what they wanted out of him. I mean, he was extremely disappointing. His PFF numbers were awful. I mean, the one saving grace for the Rams was they were able to get Aaron Donald in 2014 in the same draft, so that kind of makes up for it.
Yeah, that helps. That helps, but number 2 overall guy needs to play for your team for a long time and be a very, very good player. And the best case scenario for the worst case scenario is he's on your team for a while and he's a guy, but at least you can use him and he's a starter for 5 or 6 years. And I know he started some games, but he was not a starting caliber player. And I can't wait to get to Monday and see who the rest of the guys on these lists are, because the Greg Robinson is that low or high, however we want to characterize it, is remarkable to me.
Yeah, there's an offensive lineman that was picked around the same time that was statistically a little worse, but it's all good. I mean, they're all these juicy busts, man. I mean, when you get to the bad, it's the bad, the bad bottom of the barrel. It's pretty. They're so bad, it's good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.